All right, we're going live.
All right.
I need to see it. All right. We're live.
Excellent.
Brian, we're live, man.
Hey, I'm always alive.
I know you are. You're always alive. You're always alive. So, hey, we're starting a couple minutes after 1 here, but we do want to respect everyone's time. Brian, man, I'm glad to have you back with me for our second episode here of E3, right? Our new show. It used to be a leadership call, and now it's a show here in our Master Networks studio. So, man, I'm happy to have you back. So, educating, equipping, and empowering not only our leaders here in Master Networks, but all of our members and anyone else who's joining us today that isn't even part of Master Networks, which is a really cool thing. So, Brian, happy to have you back, man.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me back. I feel honored. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, you've earned it. You've earned it. Like we always say within Master Networks, you earn it and you deserve it. You've earned the right to be here. You're what I would consider pretty much an expert in this, especially this episode, right? Last episode we talked about how to go out and seek synergy partnerships and referral partnerships and how to start building those. And in fact, if you were on the call or on the show last month, we had a little bit of homework for you, and that was to go out and start to build those 5 synergy partners. Those people that, if you're a real estate agent, you want to build a relationship with that mortgage person, with that insurance person, because you're going to share the same clients, right? Naturally. And so you had that homework. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you went out there and you started to build those 5. We're going to dive in today how to keep communicating to not just your synergy partners, but other referral sources, referrals that you're getting. And we're going to dive right in. First, before we get rolling, Brian, though, I want to remind everyone out there just to subscribe to our YouTube page, right? So go to the Master Networks Inc. YouTube page. There's a ton of content there. We'll be putting these shows up there. There'll also be, this is a Facebook Live. They'll also be recorded through Facebook Live, and then they'll be archived on our Facebook page. So please go to the YouTube page and subscribe so that every time we put something new out, some new content, you'll be the first to know about it. And we're constantly updating and putting content on there. Again, just a reminder, this is our new show called E3, Exploding Your Business, Educating, Equipping, and Empowering our entrepreneurs and our leaders across the country to be better business owners, better leaders, and not only your chapters, your businesses, and also your family. Brian, let's just jump right into the content today, right? So we're going to talk about 4 specific communication tools or avenues that you can use to build your referrals, to take those relationships that you're building to actual referrals. So be intentional about the communication and what types of communication. We're going to talk about 4 specific things today. So get your pens ready, get your paper ready, take notes. Maybe you take notes on an iPad or something electronic. So and whatever you have, take some notes. And the cool thing is you can go back afterwards and you can watch this recording again if you didn't get everything and just get a refresher and really fine tune those notes that you're taking and the action you're going to take. That's the key to these shows, is taking action. And Brian, you've taken a lot of action on this topic. So we're going to talk about the power of writing handwritten notes. We're going to talk about first and 10 phone calls. And no, we're not going to be talking about football today, I don't think, unless Brian's going to be talking about football. I know I'm not, even though it's football season, it's not first and 10 phone calls with football, right? How to effectively attend events with your synergy partners, and then how to have meaningful face-to-face meetings. We've all had those unproductive coffee meetings or the meeting with the person that just wants to tell you all about themselves. We're going to talk about how to really get intentional about that. Something we're very familiar with Master Networks. As always, everything we talk about at some point or another is coming out of the 5+1 book. This is our training manual here at Master Networks, but it's just a great tool, an easy read, and really the business Bible. For me, I always have one laying around on my desk when I'm talking to a member, business owner. It's just a quick resource to look through. I have mine highlighted. So get your copy. You can go to our store. If you go to masternetworks.com, you can go to our store and you can buy your copy of 5+1. So get your copy of 5+1. Today, we're going to be talking about two disciplines, really. We're going to be focused on the targeting discipline and then also the master skill, which is sometimes called the lost art or the lost skill, the master skill of actually networking and how to build the relationship. So Brian, again, happy to have you. We've gotten to know each other. If you don't know who Brian is, if you didn't catch us in the first show, so Brian Solt is our regional partner down there in Southwest Florida, and really has, over the last couple years, has really dove in there and built an amazing network. He's got one of the things that Brian and his team have done really well, and I know Brian will say the same thing, it's not just him, it's leadership, it's people around him that he's working with and through to help build his Master Networks community down there. He's really good at building strong, deep chapters. It's not about having a bunch of chapters, it's about having really effective chapters where everybody's getting the most out of their relationships. And it's no surprise that you have these strong chapters that are really connected as a community, because again, that's what we're going to talk about today. So Brian, happy to have you again, man.
Thank you.
Yes, so we're going to dive in. First, I'm going to issue a challenge for this month, okay? And the challenge really, honestly, is going to be pretty simple. Simple when I say it, might be a little bit of a challenge for, I mean, all of us have challenges with our calendars. The main thing to think about as we go through these topics is when you're going to do these things in your day. And I think they need to be part of each and every one of your day. And time blocking is the key to a business owner's rhythm in their calendar. And so finding a place for these 4 things is going to be very important. So that's your challenge. Your challenge is to block time for these 4 things as we leave the call, as we leave this show, and then through to the next show. It's building habit and building rhythm, and that's the only way you can do it is time blocking. If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. So let's dive right in, Brian. So I just have a question for you, man. So when was the last time you received a handwritten note?
Actually, just about 2 days ago, I received a thank you card from some friends that were thanking me for a gift that I had recently given them. Okay. And I remember what caught my eye was when I got into the mailbox and I received the envelope and was a handwritten, my name and address on the envelope. I think that's the first thing, the first eye catcher, that grabs my attention when I receive a handwritten note in the mail.
Gotcha. Well, you kind of, so let me ask you this question, right? So yeah. before you just received this last one, how long was it since you maybe received another one?
Yeah, I probably like the holidays, maybe around Christmas.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, I know it was a thank you note, but tell me a little bit about the note you did receive a couple days ago. Like, what did it say in it? Maybe you have it, and maybe you have it there. You can show us. It looks like you have a stack of cards there in front of you. Maybe you were going to show us anyway.
Yeah, well, these are cards that I send out. These aren't any cards that I received, but no, the card's in another room. I don't want to go up and go get it right now. But yeah, it's actually something that I pinned up just as like, oh, I like it. I like to give respect to it too when someone sends it. And I'll take a picture sometimes and send it to them and be like, hey, thanks so much for the card. They'll acknowledge that I received it. Yeah. And it just said, hey, thanks so much for coming up to our event. We loved having you there. We appreciate the gift. And then they named out the gift that I had given them. And they just said a couple of nice words after that, and with the love and their name. So it was nice.
Well, how did it make you feel when you got it in the mail? How did it make you feel?
Yeah, it made me feel appreciated. It made me feel loved. It made me feel connected, and just made me feel appreciated for being present there.
Awesome. Yeah, I know here at Master Networks headquarters, every now and then I'll receive a handwritten note. Actually, the last handwritten note I think I received was actually from one of your members, Chelsea Skomack, who had a couple conversations with, had her on my podcast, and she sent me a nice thank you note. And I, just like you, Brian, I put them up. In fact, I have the ones I've collected probably over the last couple of years. I have them everywhere, somewhere in my office. I just don't throw them away. Because I feel like, I don't know. I feel like there's something that somebody's taken the time to sit down and write. You know what I mean? And I just don't throw them away. I keep them somewhere. If I get one, I put it right on my desk. I want people to see that people still write handwritten notes. And that's kind of where I'm going with this is there's this lost art of handwritten notes. And I feel like there was a time where handwritten notes was a big deal. Like everybody kind of did that. It was part of their routine. And it's not anymore. And I feel like anytime somebody gets a handwritten note, it's very powerful. And that's one of the reasons it's so effective to write handwritten notes and spend time doing that. All right. So the one thing, again, I'll say handwritten notes are a lost art. There's a couple key things you can do to really have the biggest impact with handwritten notes. And I'll just touch on a few of them. The one thing that, and some of this is coming from experience, and then also a book that we both know really well, which is called The 7 Levels of Communication. Please grab this book. It's a really good book, and it talks about the 7 levels of communication, how to communicate. There it is. Brian's got it right there, right? So he believes in the book too. Michael Mayer was actually a speaker at Connect last year. So we have got that connection. And I think what we do in Master Networks is very similar to his approach. Excuse me. You know, unbranded cards is one of the things that he talks about. Now, I've tried that also. You know, I could have a thank you note that says Master Networks on the front of it with your company branding. But I think it's a lot more impactful when you have a generic card where maybe it has, you know, some kind of an emblem on it that represents you as a person and you send it out. But I really do think that the unbranded type cards have a bigger impact. Anything you want to comment on that, on having unbranded cards, or just cards that look like real thank you cards you might have picked up at Hallmark?
Yeah, so what I do, like, I just go to the dollar store. You can go to the dollar store, you can pick up a pack of 10 small cards that have random designs on them for $1. You know, I don't spend a whole lot of money on them. And I just have different packs here. So this one just says thinking of you. Here's one that, you know, I sell real estate. This one just has some smiley faces on it, if you can see.
Yep.
And when you open them up, they're blank, right? So they're unbranded.
Yep.
This has owls, you know, because owls are cool. All kinds of fun stuff on here. You know, as selling real estate, I have some that have like little houses all over it. So yeah, nothing branded to me, nothing branded to Master Networks, nothing branded to, you know, my real estate business. It's just a general, you know, fun design, something that is neutral.
Yeah, I agree with you. It actually has a much better impact than having that company branded card that you can get, you know, 5,000 of, and they just sit on your desk. And I get that. And again, I've tried that. When I was in real estate, I used to use the unbranded cards, and they have a huge impact. And people thank you, like they acknowledge that they get them from you. So it's a big impact. I know for me, I don't have the best handwriting, so that's one thing I always kind of struggle with. It takes me a little bit longer to write a handwritten note because I have horrible handwriting, and I want them to understand. I want them to be able to read it. Obviously, one of the things that you can try to do instead of using black ink is use blue ink. So blue ink has black ink is kind of like a professional ink, and then blue ink is kind of like a little bit more personal. So I don't know if you've dabbled with that at all, but I've definitely tried to use blue ink when I send my thank you notes.
Yeah, I just grab the closest pen. But you know,
little details.
People appreciate it. So not too long ago, so I met up and had a face-to-face meeting with a friend, you know, and a member that was down in our one of our chapters. Then afterwards, I got back and grabbed a card and wrote out the note and sent it and put it in the mail. About a week later, I got a text message or an instant message or something that said, "You are one of the only men that has ever sent out a card." You guys that are out there, if you're not sending them, take a minute and send them out. You'll be noticed for that for sure.
Yeah, but, guys, send your notes to guys too.
Yeah, but so either way though, like it's people do notice it, you know, and so I love getting the feedback too when we send them out.
And Brian, I know you'll agree with this, right? And not just in handwritten cards, but in anything we say or write, words are the most important thing, and coming from the right place. I think it's important when you write a handwritten note to focus specifically on that person. And make it as custom as you possibly can. Take a little bit extra time and customize that card. Focus on a talent or a unique quality that person has. So if you're a chapter president listening to this and someone does something really cool in your chapter, or even if they're just consistent, they show up every week, right? Focus on that. Send them a handwritten note. It's amazing how far those things can go. If you have someone that that you just met that might do business with you, but it might not be for a year, send them a handwritten note. And just as you get to know them and know their qualities, focus on their qualities. Always make it about them. And the other thing too is if at the end of it you include a PS can be like a call to action. So if there is a call to action that you want them to take, to call you, or maybe you want to provide additional piece of value or something, put a PS at the bottom of it. Again, it's a mental psychological thing that is more personal, and that's how a lot of people end their thank you notes, right? Anything else on that, Brian?
No, I think just be purposeful, about what you're doing. So when you have these meetings, these face-to-face meetings, follow up. I was just in Plant City, Florida. It's about 2.5 hours from here. I don't know anybody up there, and we were launching a chapter up there. And I have all of the business cards from the members. And so knowing that we were coming into this today and being purposeful about what we're doing, my intention is to write a business card for all of the members that were there. There was about 20 people in the room.
Yep.
And just to create more of a connection, because they don't know who I am. And so I would love to just kind of, stick in their mind a little bit more of doing something personal with the handwritten note. And very true, like the conversations that I had with various visitors that were in there, anything that I can remember from them, I'm going to add into that note just to add that level of personality to it.
Yeah, and also on that note, get it on that note. If you're consistent and build the habit of writing handwritten notes, you'll be more attentive when you're having conversations like that to truly listen and pick out things that you can then obviously put into a handwritten note or put into your database in the notes, that when you're calling that person back or when you're sending a handwritten note, you're focusing specifically. It means a lot to people when they remember. I know if I get a handwritten note and it's specific to a conversation I had with that person 3 or 4 weeks ago and they remembered that goes a long way. That goes a long way. And this, I think the thing to remind people too is this is not, writing a handwritten note today may or may not get you a piece of business, may or may not get you a piece of business ever from that specific person, but it's about building the relationship and showing you care and you really are thinking about that person and you remember the conversations you have. Lastly, on handwritten notes, the challenge is to write 50 a week. So if you're listening to this, your challenge is to write 50 handwritten notes. So starting next week, block the time out, write 10 a day or whatever it takes, do the work to whatever it takes to write 50 handwritten notes. People are probably thinking, who the heck do I write handwritten notes to? Honestly, it's anybody and everybody. I mean, anybody from somebody you might be doing business with already that you had a really good business experience with. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's family member, maybe it's somebody in your chapter. It doesn't really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter. It does matter who you write notes to, but you can write a note and thank anybody for anything and just show appreciation to people. That's what this is really about, right, Brian?
Yeah, and I think again, but part of that intention with it is set out those 10 note cards the day before, and even write down the names of the 10 people that you're going to write to the day before. Because I know I've gotten in ruts where I sit down, I'm like, all right, who am I going to write to? And then I go onto Facebook to look up a name, and then I'm on Facebook for an hour, right? And then you get distracted, and then the phone rings, and then you check your emails. Next thing you know, it's the end of the day, and you haven't written a single note. So prepare ahead of time, and then prioritize. Who are the people that you want to reach out to first on those?
Yep. I mean, start with your synergy partners that you're building these relationships with. That's a good place to start. Master Networks chapter members, people that have come to Master Networks meetings that maybe didn't join Master Networks, but you kind of have a relationship or have built one with them, or you're trying to build one. There's a million places to look if you just sit down and, like Brian said, maybe take some time before next week and write down a list of your 50 people that you're going to write those handwritten notes to. Be prepared, because I know, like, to your point, if I sit down and go, oh, now who are my 10 going to be today? It's a lot harder to get through that and be efficient. You might even have somebody, or maybe you don't, that can actually address the envelopes and then mail them out. If you're a business owner and you're working on your own, you might not have that. But if you do, leverage the people around you, your team, write the handwritten note and then maybe have somebody else address it and send it out. Anything else on handwritten notes before we go to 2?
Nope, just the other piece of that would be when they address it, handwrite the address on the front as well, rather than print out, peel and stick labels. Right? I think that catches people's attention a lot more than something that's printed on the front of an envelope.
For sure. I think that's a guaranteed must. Like, you have to write, if you're going to write the card on the inside, have either yourself or somebody else handwrite the envelope on the outside, for sure. All right, first and 10 calls. So if we lead generate, which we all should be lead generating, these can be part of your lead generation each and every day. So first and 10 is pretty simple. First means you do it first in the beginning of your day, and I'll touch on why in a second. And you make 10 calls, focus on making 10 calls each and every day. So that's 50 calls a week if you're calling 5 days a week. The reason we do them very early on in the day, honestly, is because your energy is the highest. And I've always learned, throughout my years of being in business and being coached, do the things in the morning that might be harder to do in the afternoon. Do them in the morning when you have the most energy. You're going to sound better on the phone. You're going to provide energy. Get it over with, get it done with, and do it first thing in the morning. So make those 10 calls each and every day, first thing. Approach it with a heart to help. So approach every single call. You could do it very similar. Hopefully you all have a database. If you don't, get a database and put your folks in there where you can take notes. And when you call that person, you might have talked to them before. You can ask them a question just like you would send them a note and acknowledge something you know about them. Acknowledge some conversation you had with them prior to. Come with a heart of help. Look into those calls as uncovering a need. So just as if you're a Master Networks member and we sit there, and we're going to talk about Bond here in a second, when you sit there and you're uncovering a need and develop an opportunity, that's the idea of these phone calls also. Again, you're focusing on the person you're talking to. So see if you can uncover a need that they have. What's their biggest challenge maybe right now in their business? How can you help them out with that? These calls, honestly, a lot of the times are going to come out of the blue for that person. But if you lead it with a coming from contribution mentality, these can be very powerful. The other thing I would say is as you make these calls, and this is in the book also, they talk about this in the book, is rank your calls. So as you're done with the call, feel how effective it was. Are you best friends with that person after you leave the call, or did they hang up on you in the beginning? That would be a 1, by the way, if they hang up on you. Hopefully they don't hang up on you, but if you're coming from the right place, they shouldn't, right? But rank your calls. So that's how you know to improve what you're saying to someone. And if you really are coming from contribution. The other thing I'll say is to these calls, these are not follow-up calls from the day before. These are brand new calls. So if you make 10 calls on Monday and you get 2 return calls, these are not follow-ups. They're not follow-ups. They're brand new calls. So make 10 new calls every single day. And it's similar to kind of handwritten notes. These are anyone and everyone, people in your database. Is it possible that you get a piece of business out of these calls? For sure. But these calls are meant to, again, come from contribution. How can I help you uncover a need? And a lot of times it's either you can provide them with a service that you can help them with a service that you provide, or you can connect them with someone else. Brian, give us some thoughts on your calls, and maybe you don't specifically do first and 10 calls, but what are you doing? How are you approaching these types of calls?
Yeah, and I would love to do them first thing in the morning, right? And you're right, the energy's high. And when you said that, I kind of laughed because it's 2 o'clock now. I've been going at it since 5 o'clock this morning, and I'm starting to crash a little bit. Yeah. I've got a few more calls to jump on here, and yeah. So, and plus, you ever heard the term "swallow the frog"? The one thing that you do, and I don't know, for me, picking up that phone sometimes and calling those 10 seems daunting. So a piece of that same thing, right? Pre-plan your calls. What are the 10 people you're going to call? Know that ahead of time, and then just wipe it out. Hit that list and just blast through it. Take an hour, and make 10 calls and reach out to people. Make them quality calls, and it's important. There's a system to numbers. So I know for me, like when I was working in the corporate world, and I was in an office and I did sales. It was database sales. We would sell lists, names, and addresses. I would pick up the phone and I would call past clients, and I would spend all day just making phone calls. Typically in that room that I was in, like you were waiting for the phone to ring, and I just didn't feel like sitting and waiting for the phone to ring. So I just started making outbound calls. So I'd crank up some, I don't know, like techno music or some high energy music of some sort, to kind of get my rhythm going. And I would probably make about 30, 40, 50 calls a day, in an 8-hour day. And I became one of the top salespeople in that division just for making those calls. And I used to laugh because at 2 o'clock, I would just start putting my feet up on the desk because I was hitting my goals and the phones were ringing. It was really in the numbers. The more phone calls you make, the more, there's going to be a percentage of folks that are going to say yes. And I built a pretty good repeat database. And so same thing, so making those phone calls, just start off with 10 minutes, right? And then take that time, to finish out those 10 calls for the day, 50 calls for the week.
Yep.
I have a friend that I'm doing accountability calls with about once a week, and she has a house cleaning business. And so I reached out and I said, "What's your goal? What do you want to do?" And she said, "Well, I want to make, I think she said 20 calls a day." And I said, "Okay, perfect." And she's been making on average 15, and she's been booking, cleaning jobs just from making those calls. And she wasn't making calls before, and she was struggling with getting cleaning jobs. And after she started making the calls, making the connections, she was seeing immediate results from that. So it works. It's definitely a proven system.
Yeah, it's definitely a numbers game. I mean, it certainly is. I think one of the cool things about these first and 10 calls is that they're easy phone calls because, again, generally you're coming from a place where you're calling that person and thanking them for something, acknowledging a talent that they have, and those are the easy ones. Those are the best way to start your day. And while they're part of your lead gen, right? Like you're talking about, it leads really nicely into maybe your cold calls, right? If you're in real estate and you have to call a for sale by owner or an expired listing or whatever that is, those are the difficult ones. Start off your day or even mix in those first and 10 calls. It kind of breaks it up. It's a successful call because there's really not much wrong that can go wrong with that type of phone call anyway. Yeah. So, but it's a numbers game for sure. It's part of your lead generation.
And I'm purposeful about those calls as well. So if I'm calling for master networks, at the end of the call, I'll say, "By the way, do you know of anyone?" I don't ask them to come to a chapter. I ask them if they know of anyone that would like to come to a chapter.
Yep.
So that they can beyond them immediately. Same thing with real estate. When you get off the phone on that prospect call, it's hey, do you know of anyone that you think might be interested in buying or selling a home? Yep. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I am," but the thing that you immediately tap into that next level, and just asking them for that referral, basically, like, who do you know?
It's a great point. You can absolutely and should absolutely do that even on these types of calls. Absolutely, all day long. Just to recap for you, if you just jumped on this call or just jumped on this show, I should say, I keep calling it a call because it used to be called a call. It's a show, and we're happy to be in our studio here at Master Networks. We are talking to Brian Solt here in Southwest Florida, and we are talking about handwritten notes and how effective they can be and how powerful they can be. We just touched on first and 10 phone calls and how to effectively make those phone calls every day. Now we're going to jump into attending events. So, Brian, I know that you've done a really good job at this piece. The one thing I will just mention before I kind of unleash it and let it go to you to kind of tell us your story a little bit about these events is the one cool thing about going to events with synergy partners specifically. So again, I'll use real estate as an example. So if you go to an event and you're a real estate agent and you go with a mortgage person, you guys and gals are sharing that client, right? So if you break up and you split up and you go to this event and you go and network and let's just say your focus is to make 6 solid connections, and the mortgage person goes and they make 6 solid connections. Well, that could be 12 referrals or 12 leads that you could get versus you going by yourself and just getting 6, if that makes sense. So you can share it, and there could be 3 synergy partners or 4 that go at the same time, and you're all going to kind of share those pieces of business eventually if they turn into business or those referrals. So that's just the one thing I wanted to point out. But Brian, what are some of the I guess stories or ways you've been using events?
Yeah, so I mean, events have really helped us build our chapters here in Southwest Florida. There's a couple of after-hours monthly socials that we've connected with. That's what I love about Master Networks is we're a non-compete, and we come from a mindset of abundance, and we aligned ourselves with partners that focus on abundance. So there's Warm Introduction Networking down in Naples and in Fort Myers that we've partnered with. There's Rockstar that's in Naples that we've connected with. The woman that was running Rockstar started one of our chapters, and it's called Master Networks. We call it the Rockstar chapter, and it works both ways. So we've invited people at these events, and then when Master Networks, as we're continuing to grow our chapters and focus on introduction, we invite those people to come to the after-hour socials to meet after the meeting. Yeah. And it's a fun way, right? So and we've talked about this, both kind of go hand in hand. If you're just doing the meeting and you show up for that meeting for that hour, that's not as effective, right? The real magic happens outside of that room. Having the face-to-face meetings, having that intentional connection, right? And and really diving into each other's business and building on relationships and doing a needs discovery, developing opportunities. The other one is just having, some conversation and some talk with folks afterwards. Some key notes, like even from the 7 levels of communication that I really enjoyed was, again, always be intentional. So when you're going to these networking events, be intentional about what it is that you want to do. What are you trying to achieve? Be aware, who do you want to connect with before you even get to the event? Find out who's organizing the event. Contact that person. Reach out and introduce yourself to them, and then find them when you're at the event and ask them ahead of time, hey, who are 3 people that I really need to connect with at this event? Who are the connectors? And then when you get there, ask them to give you a warm introduction to those people, rather than just going up and blindly asking them. And so that's a big part of it. Another one is volunteer at these events. So there's an event up in Sarasota. It's about an hour and a half from me. I'm looking to get some Master Networks chapters up there. I don't know anybody. And so I, twofold. One, it holds me accountable because it's an hour and a half drive. I can get some social anxiety. And, the day of the event would come and I would find ways not to go to the event. Oh, it's raining. Oh, I'm leaving too late. I won't get there until it's halfway through. It's such a long drive. I'm tired. So finally, one day I volunteered. I signed up to volunteer. And then the day came and I was like, well, I got to commit to this. Like I already did. I got to be there. I don't want to let them down. And so I drove up there, had a blast. And now every time I go and volunteer, every single time, and I just really focus on being a contribution. And it puts me in front of so many people. And they're just open. It's just creating relationships all over the place. People are so much more open to hearing what it is that I'm doing because they've seen me showing up. So there's so many different ways that you can utilize events to really get in front of groups of people.
Yep.
The thing with these events, right? The larger the event, the better. If there's 60 people there, that's an exciting event to see. How many of those people do you really get to connect with, though? Maybe 5 of them that are in there, right? And you might have 10 business cards, but you may have 5 real solid conversations.
Yep.
And continue to follow up on those people. And so that's where the phone calls come in, right? Always be adding to your database. So use these events to add to your database, and then use them to invite people to your Master Networks chapter. Follow up with them with a card. Follow up with them with a written note. Follow up with them with a phone call. Connect with them more. And I think that's a forgotten piece as well, is follow up after an event. And I think it's critical. So automate your systems. Like I use Next Level Suite, and I've got a page, a lead capture page set up that has an automatic drip campaign set up depending upon what event I go to. I've got one set up for each event, and I take my cards and I type them in, and now I've gathered the contact information. They get an email, and it's just a general, hey, it was nice meeting you. If you ever need any support, let me know. I'm happy to. Here's my contact information. I don't invite them to anything in that email. I don't try to sell them on anything. It's just, here I am. And then later I will call them and I'll follow up and I'll send notes, and then I'll establish rapport with them, and then start moving on into, hey, what can we do to work together here? How can I support you on real estate, or how can I support you with building a Master Networks chapter or getting you plugged into one? And being in front of them really shows. And then connecting with those synergy partners, right? That's another piece. When you come with someone, when you invite someone to go with you, it's like when you go to the gym. It's challenging to go to the gym, but if you're going to meet your buddy there at 10 o'clock, well, then you're going to go, right? Or if you're going to meet them there at 6 in the morning, then you're more likely to go. So invite your friends to come meet you at the event, and now you're not going to let them down. You're more likely to attend that event and be there and be present, and reach out to your synergy partners to do that. And it becomes a win-win for everyone.
Man, so many good tidbits there. I hope if you're watching this, I hope you're writing and taking notes, because I'm taking notes myself, learning stuff. A couple of the points that I wrote down here. One was contact the organizer of the event. What a great tactic that is, right? If anybody knows who's coming, it's them, right? They have the RSVP list. They know who you should connect with. And you're right. Ask them who to connect with, because I'll tell you, man, when I started a network, I was that person that would go to a business card exchange at a chamber, and I'd hand out, 50 business cards. I'd leave and I'd go, wow, that was awesome event. And you never make any true connections that way. So it wasn't until I really got intentional about making those 5 or 6 connections that the other thing I wrote down was having a plan for when you go into that. What are you going to do? What's the goal? set up a face-to-face with that person that day at that event where you can connect with them afterwards and really dive into the face-to-face, which we're going to touch on right now. Volunteer at these events. I mean, what a great opportunity. You go, you volunteer your time. You also meet the people that organize the events who know those people and who you need to meet, and they'll introduce you to those people. And the follow-up is huge, right? The follow-up is huge to these events. If you get a business card and you tell someone you're going to reach out to them, reach out to them. You have to reach out to them. If you tell them you're going to connect with them, or just deliver on what you say you're going to do, because they're, everybody, when you meet somebody for the first time, they're testing you out to see, how long is it going to take you to follow up? If you say you're going to reach out to them and send them an email after the event and you're not planning on doing that, don't tell them you're going to do that. Tell them you're going to get them an email tomorrow or whatever it might be. And then go with somebody, because honestly, it's just more fun to go with somebody. Go with people in your chapter. Go to an outside networking event. It's a great way, especially if you're launching a chapter right now. What a great way to go to another networking event and meet some folks and telling them about what you're doing with Master Networks. Just a really cool tactic. But man, just tying the loop up too with the handwritten notes and then also the first and 10 calls, right? These people you're meeting can then be part of the handwritten notes in the first and 10. So it all ties together, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, man, let's jump into our last one for this show here, our last topic for the show, and that is meaningful face-to-face meetings. How do we have the most effective face-to-face meetings? Two things I definitely want to cover. One is the FacetoFace Stack, which I've used. I don't know if you've used that, but we have members in our region here, members all over the country that are starting to use these face-to-face stacks, and they're very effective. And then also Bond. It's what our relationship building foundation is at Master Networks. So Brian, you want to touch on Bond, and then maybe I'll pick up the face-to-face stacks and how that works.
Sure, absolutely. Well, yeah, in those face-to-face meetings, those are critical, right? Again, that's where the magic happens, is outside of that room. So if you come to that meeting for an hour and you don't think about the meeting until 30 minutes before when you're driving there, and you stop thinking about it 2 minutes after you walk out the door, you're not going to see results, through referrals. But if you take time to connect with members outside of that room, in the socials and in face-to-face meetings, phone calls, cards, everything, you'll see results. So on those face-to-face meetings, really create relationship during those meetings, right? No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so connect with them, let them talk more, ask delving questions with them and let them talk more. And then, just build rapport with them. And a great way to build rapport with someone is to utilize the methodology of BOND. And BOND is an acronym that reminds us of steps that we can take when we are having a face-to-face meeting with someone. And I love the acronym spells out exactly what it is that you're doing. You're bonding with people. And so before you even start talking about any type of business or anything, just build on that common interest first. What is it that you have in common with the person sitting across from you, so that you can start to relate to each other? And when people relate to each other, they're more open to hear what the other person has to share. And it could be anything. Like, so yesterday I was again up in Plant City, and we did a little Bond breakout as a fun example. And there were two ladies that had been networking for years. And I can't remember exactly what it was that they had learned, but I think it was like they were from the same city or gone to the same college, something really like profound. And they're like, we've known each other for how long? And we didn't know that. Like, you can find out some amazing things just by taking time to find something in common. And then once you find that commonality, right, the walls come down. You're softer, right? People are more open to receive at that point, both of you. That's when you move into the occupation exploration. And don't just ask them what they do, ask them why they do it. What's their passion? What got them into what they do? What are some success stories that they have? And understand their business really well. And again, we're all here to give and receive referrals, so you're basically learning, how is it that I can refer you, And so when I meet with people, I'm asking them, well, what do your synergy partners look like that I can invite you to, And that's when you get into the needs discovery. So I'm jumping ahead with that, but that would be something like, what are your synergy partners? So the N in Bond is needs discovery. So what challenges are they having in their life? What What are they looking to achieve, you know, in their business or in their life? What are they missing, or what are they looking for, or who do they want to connect with, you know? And what is it that that you guys can offer each other?
Yeah.
And so again, with me, like, I'll ask a lot of questions as who are your synergy partners, and I'll put them with other connectors out there that can flow referrals to them. And last but not least is the D, develop the opportunity. And that's where you start coming up with action plans. Hey, here's how we can work together. Maybe someone is short on staff and they need a part-time employee, but they can't afford even 20 hours or 40 hours a week. Well, two of you can share, you know, a staff member, you know, and break out that time. I've done that before in the past. We had two ladies that were going to a trade show, and they didn't really want to spend the full amount on the trade show. So they split costs and then split the table. And there was so many benefits to that because the table was full of their product. And there was always someone at the table managing it. So one could walk away and get a drink or use the bathroom or network while the other one managed it, and they could trade off on that. If one was slow and the other one was real busy, had 2 or 3 people, they would support each other. It just created such a buzz there. So there's all kinds of opportunities that'll come up from bonding. And again, it's just it makes it intentional. So when I sit down with someone to do a face-to-face, I'm intentional, and it helps me walk away with some type of an opportunity at the end of every meeting.
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway of that is having a strategic plan, and bond is something you can learn. So if bond is new to you, you can learn it and should learn it because you can use it in so many different aspects of your life. You know, we often talk, Brian and I, you have talked about this too, about how many times you have a meeting with someone and you might not even get to O. Like
Right.
Sometimes you don't get to O, but that's okay. Don't rush that. It's a process. It's building that relationship. And trust me, you can have another face-to-face with that person. So you have the strategy. You're probably thinking maybe your goal is to do 5 face-to-face meetings a week. What if, I'm just gonna throw this out there, right? So what if you could, instead of running all over the different areas and meeting people at different locations and having face-to-faces all over the place, what if you could bring everyone to you in one location and get your face-to-face meetings done in one day? So that's what the face-to-face stack is. The face-to-face stack is you picking a location, whatever that might be, where you block out, say, 3 hours or whatever that is, 4 hours, whatever many face-to-faces you want to have. And you invite those folks to you. So this is about calendaring, controlling your calendar, and you invite them to the face-to-face at a certain time block. It does a couple things. Obviously, it's a great use of your time. It also does another cool thing. So let's just say you're meeting with someone at 9 o'clock, and the next face-to-face starts at, say, 10 o'clock or whatever, however the block is. And those two folks don't know each other. So the 9 and 10, they don't know each other. Well, when the 10 o'clock comes for their meeting, you can introduce the 9 to the 10, and then you're also building value there because now the 9 and 10 met, right? And so that's how you can build synergy partners. It might be 2 of your synergy partners separate that now you've brought together. It's just a really cool way to, again, use your time efficiently with these face-to-face meetings and attack it with a plan. Attack it with a plan, and if you lead the charge into inviting somebody to the face-to-face instead of saying, hey, Brian, I want to have a face-to-face with you. When are you available? That kind of thing. And then you go back and forth for 3 days, figuring out when you can calendar it. You just say, hey, can you do a face-to-face? Do you have a time open between 9 and 12 or whenever that time is at this location? And then you block them in that way. So I've done it. I know there's quite a few folks here in Texas that are doing that, members. And so it's a very effective tool that I would encourage you to try next week.
Yeah, and there's some pieces to that as well. Like when find like a restaurant or a cafe or something that's quaint, right? For one, look for something that's locally owned because we want to support local business.
Yes.
And 2, there's that personal connection, right, with the customer service. So if you're at a restaurant where there's different servers every single time that you're there, see if you can find one that has a more consistent server, and then build rapport with that server and get to know the server. Ask them about their family and who they are, and work them into the face-to-face meetings that you're having as well, right? Because then that kind of gives you some credibility with the people that you're sitting across from. Introduce them to the server, and then you overlap the meetings so that you can introduce the 2 people. I've had some great relationships come by overlapping where the two started working together on some great synergies as well. So that's a fantastic strategy. Absolutely. So there's so much goodness that can come from stacking. Right? You're not driving around all over the place. You're not exhausted. You're saving on gas. You're supporting a local business. Like there's a coffee shop in Cape Coral. We've got 3 chapters that meet in Cape Coral here in Southwest Florida. And we keep that coffee shop in business. It's fun when I go and have a face-to-face meeting at that coffee shop, because I can look around and I think 80% of the people in there, like at the right day, right, are Bastion Networks members on a Thursday or on a Friday, because that's where everyone goes for these face-to-face meetings. And then we're all, it's like cheers. Everyone's like, hey, what's going on?
That's cool.
So, yeah, we're like an unofficial sponsor of that coffee shop. Yeah, it's fun.
It's very cool, man. It's so effective. Man, we've got them a lot of content today, a lot of content. In fact, we're a little bit over on 30 minutes here, but I hope that it's been valuable. I'm just going to run through here just to recap real quick. So handwritten notes. So the goal is 50 handwritten notes a week. Start building that habit. Then we talked about first and 10 phone calls. So making those 10 phone calls first thing in the morning and building that habit. So that's 50 calls a week, right? Roughly. And then how to effectively go to events. So block an event out or 2 next week, go with somebody, bring a synergy partner with you, take a chapter member with you, go network and have a plan when you do it. And then set up your face-to-face meetings, stack them, and be intentional about the outcome of each one of the 4 of these things. And then, give yourself feedback on those, see how it goes and continue to improve. If you can implement all 4 of these strategies, and you can time block and be consistent with it and build those habits, I can guarantee you will be turning your relationships that you're building into referrals. It's something that it just happens if you're doing the activity. It's putting the time in and actually doing that activity. Brian, maybe 1 or 2 tips out there based on everything we've talked about today that you could kind of leave us with or leave our folks with. That might be something beneficial as they leave with a ton of notes and a ton of action items.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. I feel like I gave all the tips that I know. It's everything I know completed. So I just had lunch with a gentleman before this call, and he's doing something really cool. He's a real estate agent here in town, and he is hosting his own events. So if there's not an event in town, host your own, be that host. And that's another thing. When you are at these events, be a host at the event. Even if it's not your event, act like a host. And so when I'm at an event and someone walks up to me, I will connect them. I'll be like, oh, this is what you do. Hey, Jim, by the way, you guys needed to connect. And I'll introduce the 2 of them, and then I'll walk away and go chat with someone else too while the 2 of them go on. So people really respect that. Someone did that for me, and I was very appreciative of it. And so I carry that forward.
Yep. Great advice, man. Great wisdom. You've been a product of what we're talking about today, which I appreciate, and I appreciate your experience and you sharing your stories. It's been another great show, man, and I'm looking forward to the next one where we're going to dive into even some more things on how to keep building those relationships and turning them into referrals. Again, the challenge is all of those 4 things that we just talked about. The 50 handwritten notes, the first and 10 calls. Go to book 2 events next week and go to those, or host an event or 2 next week, and then start doing your face-to-face stacks. Reminder to everybody that's watching this show either live right now or they're watching it on a recording, you can watch it again and again because it's recorded on Facebook Live. It's in our archives. Also, reminder, go to our YouTube, Master Networks Inc. YouTube page and follow us there. You'll see all the brand new content going out. It's something we're really passionate about right now. Just keep putting content on our YouTube page. And don't forget the first show and the first piece, the first challenge from the first show was to build 5 synergy partners. Continue to build relationships with those 5 synergy partners. Now go build another 5, and keep building those relationships. And you can use all these 4 tactics we talked about today to build those. Brian, any last words?
No, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. Have a good rest of your day. Have a good rest of your day if you're watching this live or if you're watching the recording. And tune in for a next show in a month. It's going to be the 2nd Thursday in November at 1 o'clock Central Time. You've been watching the E3 show, educating, equipping, and empowering leaders, entrepreneurs, not only just the Master Networks, but around the country. Take care. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye.
See you, Brian.